Okay, welcome to another episode of Coffee with Samso. Today I've got Vince Algar here with Australian Vanadium.
That's right.
To talk about Vanadium. So maybe a quick intro who you are with what you're a geo, whatever, in history, and then we can go from there.
I'm a geologist. Spent my first few years in mining, underground in South Africa, in gold. Came over here in the mid-90s and worked as a consultant for a few years with RSG, and then went on to work for the mining software company Serpac for 6 years.
Okay.
Which was really, really instructive. I learned a lot about the state, and then enlisted Shore River with Atlas, and then spent a few years doing that, and then found my way, really got into manganese, really liked the steel alloy space, and around 14, 15 I did some other work and picked up this role as CEO of AVL, and we set about rebranding the company from its previous title, which was called Yellow Rock, which was a uranium company.
Thank you. You get to be in the shop.
So we picked up, the company had always had this asset inside it, so when I arrived, the combination of the geology, which is bushveld style geology, magnetite, mafic, layered intrusion type of thing, I really liked that. And then because I'd been working in the alloy space with manganese, I quite liked the play of where the metal was, what the metal was used for. The battery thing was really starting to go. Syra just made some noise about vanadium then. The vanadium battery was on its way. So the combination of those factors, and I got into the role and really started to like what we could do with it. But the geology is what excited me in the beginning, and the scale of the project, and the grade of the project, and then what it was able to do metallurgically really got me interested in what it was doing.
So when did this start? I mean, I'm a late comer to vanadium, like probably most people in the market. You guys started this in when did you all start?
So the company had the asset when it listed in 2007.
2007, wow.
But it was a uranium play, so it focused on the uranium prices going on. Then the company went into a phase where the iron ore boom was on, and they looked at the project as an iron ore play.
Okay.
But it's not it's a titaniferous magnetite. It's not an iron ore as a first pass. It produces an iron ore product, but it's not an iron ore play. And I think that was where the effort was initially. So good work was done to set up the next step. But when I arrived, it was all pre-2012 JORC qualified resource that needed to be upgraded. My background in consulting and geology got that in, so the company raised some money just before I arrived in 2014, and we set about spending that money on upgrading the resource to a 2012 compliant resource. And the intention was also to get it into some indicated resources on it. So infill drill, what they'd done. They drilled it in a very wide space, which was good. So we knew how big it could be. We just didn't know the detail. And it also was the shift to make it into a vanadium play rather than into an iron ore play. So that was the shift that took place between 14 and 15, and we started to grow the resource, started to grow the knowledge about what it was, and how we could, soon after that, once we pushed the resource base up to where it is now, about 90 odd million tonnes of this high grade resource, 150 odd million tonnes of total resource. We started to home in on the high grade resource as the potential economic horizon, and that's where we started to really get a feel for the capability that this resource has as one of the world's best resource bases for vanadium.
With vanadium, I mean, I don't know much about it. Learned a lot over the last couple of years. But what is good grade? What is a good resource grade? I mean, can you let us know?
So there's a couple of parameters you've got to be aware of in there. And these are generally true of bulk commodities or commodities that you want to extract concentrate from. So we have the in situ grade of the vanadium in the rock, and also the type of mineralization. So vanadium occurs in a number of different settings, sedimentary and other settings, but all the operating mines in the world that extract vanadium are vanadium titanium magnetites. Okay, and almost all of those
as a mineral, or
as the rock type.
It's the rock type.
They're layered intrusions. They're in the gabbro sequence, and they're magnetites. Mainly they're massive magnetites, or they have a lot of magnetite in them.
Yep.
And those are the source rocks for the operating mines.
Yep.
Brazil, South Africa. The Chinese also produce a lot of their vanadium from titanous magnetites, but they're much lower in grade. So just to remember that almost all the vanadium in the world that comes out of rocks is coming from VTMs.
Okay.
But then for the primary mines, the three that are operating, those are our benchmarks, particularly Bushveld Minerals, the Metco operation in South Africa, Glencore's Rovan operation in South Africa, same ore body along strike, and then Largo Resources Maracas project in Brazil. They're all high-grade VTMs, so they've all got an ore grade of between 0.8 and 1%. So that's really what sets the economic benchmark of the head grade.
0.8 to 1%.
Yeah, in their head grade, in their feed. So that's what starts you off as having a good deposit to work with. And that also sets you up in a position where you're probably going to be able to get the conventional vanadium salt roast leach process underway. When you go below that grade, you have to resort to other methods to get the grade out. And a good example of that is Windermere, the Australian project. Its head grade was about 0.4, and that really made it so the choice of processing there was quite hard to get out. The second thing that happens is they're magnetites, so you want to concentrate them using magnetic concentration. So when you concentrate the material, you have to get two things. You have to get a good concentrate quality, which is true of many deposits as well, other types as well, and then you've got to get a good yield. So the mass yield from the ore to the concentrate has to be high. So you want to get quite a lot of tons in. So when you put a ton in, you want to get quite a lot of that back in the concentrate. If you don't, your economies of processing large amounts of ore to get a small amount of concentrate, even if it's very good concentrate. So there's a balance. So
you're talking about taking the magnetite out of the ore.
That's right.
As a concentrate.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these rocks are in our terrains and elsewhere in the world. They're weathered, so they don't all just split it up. And they've also got other things in them, like silicates, aluminosilicates. So when you put them through a mag separator, not all of it's magnetite. In the case of our project, it's quite unique in that respect. It has a very high mass yield to concentrate. It's got a lot to do with the nature of that high-grade horizon that we've got. So we think that stands out. But to give you an example, over in South Africa and in Brazil, they get around a 30% mass yield from their ore to their concentrate. But in both of those cases, they get quite a high concentrate. They get a concentrate grade in Brazil of over 3%, and in South Africa of over 2%. So you've got to weigh those three factors up: the ore grade, the concentrate yield, and the concentrate grade. And those three together will define what's a good vanadium deposit and what isn't. And ours certainly fits very well into the good category. As soon as you bring those factors down, you start to where if your concentrate grade is poor, but your mass yield is high, you've got to weigh that up. If you've got a very low grade ore body, that's still, the rule still applies. No? If you've got grade is king. So good grade in the head grade is always going to be good for you. Metallurgically, you've now found a way to solve that with magnetics and so on. So we're very pleased with where we've been able to do the geology and work on the deposit. But it's some very important things here in Western Australia is understanding the geology, not only as the primary unweathered geology, but understanding the weathered geology. From gold, from nickel, laterites. We live in Western Australia is a very weathered environment. But so is Brazil and so is South Africa, as it turns out. So understanding the weathering and how that affects your yield is absolutely paramount to the success of any project. And this one is the same. So we're focusing on the geometallurgy quite intensely.
So I'm gathering that your vanadium comes from the magnetite. Magnetite weathers to hematite.
Yeah.
So if you get a highly weathered ore body or geology, would the yield drops because of that?
Yeah.
So you really want a fresh biff to some degree.
Yeah. Well, what you want is you want to be able to understand how you're going to get all this vanadium out of the rock. So you're going to get the best yield you can. So the rocks obviously weather from surface down. Yep. So you've got completely oxidized rocks, you've got partially oxidized rocks, and you've got fresh rocks. Now obviously the fresh rocks yield the most, and the oxidized rocks to be able to do. So in the mine schedule, that becomes really important. So you want to blend your material, and you want to design your plant around that blend that gets the best answer. So that's what we're currently doing. Is we've found a magnetic circuit that gives us a very high yield, around 60% over the life of the mine, by using oxide and transitional material and fresh material. So our mining sequence must match that over the mine, and that's doable because we've got a lot of place to work with. Right? We've got 11 kilometers of strike that we can work with, which gives us a lot of opportunity.
It's interesting. I've forgotten about this point when you mentioned it, that you were iron ore project and then you sort of transitioned to a vanadium company. I ran into a company who is a vanadium company now wanting to be an iron ore up in the Labrador Trough in Canada.
Yes.
So I think they wanted to go down the Champion Iron route and
that's right, yes.
become that. So
and that's always an alternative for these projects because that's what the Chinese do.
Okay.
Most of the Chinese iron ore vanadium is produced by taking an iron ore, smelting it, and producing a slag. And that slag, when you blow air through the slag in the furnace, so you put it into a blast furnace or an arc furnace, and when you blow air through that furnace, the vanadium slags off at the top. And that's how 60% of the world's vanadium is made.
Oh, okay.
It's made as a slag. They slag it off in big steel mills in like pan steel. They take that slag off and then they crush it up and then they put it in the kiln, pretty similar to what we do. So they just have a higher grade feed. So that method that being employed or considered in Canada is a good method to use. But it's only possible when you have very, very low cost power, which they have up in Labrador from hydro. So when you have low power, it's a thing to consider. When you don't have low cost power, you choose the other route, which is why Brazil and South Africa and ourselves would use gas-fired roasting as an alternative, which is still an efficient and well understood method.
Okay.
If you've got lower grades than that and you want to try and extract more value, there are a number of companies out there that are looking at acid leaching. And there's a lot of risk around that because no one's ever done it commercially. But acid leaching is if you like, the holy grail of low grade titaniferous magnetites because it lets you extract the titanium, the iron, and the vanadium. But often there's a lot of other things that there's a very risky play, as we've seen in nickel laterites, for example. Anything that involves pressure acid leaching is risky, and in this particular case, it's never been done commercially. So we believe that pushing towards higher grade is the better place to go. And we're blessed with that because we can say that because we've got a very good, large, high-grade deposit. So
yeah, well,
it's easy for me to talk, right?
Yeah, sure. I guess the other thing is I always felt vanadium was part of the steel making process. I've just looked through your presentation there. I mean, you made up 40% of your use or something that you mentioned, or not? Was it?
Yeah, it's 90%.
90%, yeah. Is that the case going forward, do you think? I know there's the vanadium flow battery. I mean, I did an article back a few months now about that kind of stuff, and then I looked into things like even the possibility of a tungsten battery, and obviously we got the lithium battery, cobalt stuff. Do you think that's going to change? I mean, what do you see as the upside or future?
So if you look at the growth, look at the status quo, which is you have a steel industry that grows maybe 2 or 3%. The primary driver for vanadium consumption in the world is the Chinese rebar sales.
The what? Sorry?
Chinese rebar. So the rebar that they use in Chinese construction, that is a definitive driver for vanadium consumption on a global scale. Just that one factor. So if you want to know where overall vanadium consumption is, look at that and then follow it up. It's quite seasonal, as it turns out. It's quite up and down. But as long as there's growth within China or export growth within the region, and Chinese steel mills are producing rebar, so vanadium will grow. So you can expect average vanadium consumption to increase 2 or 3% a year as that increases. Then you have changes to Chinese standards over time. We had one last November. We had one in 2014 where the Chinese lifted their standard up in terms of their quality of their steel. And when they do that, that involves the use of more microalloy steel, which is in this case niobium or more manganese steels, carbon steels, and also more vanadium steels. So that's the natural growth of consumption for vanadium. That'll always be that way. There's lots of opportunity then outside of that. So other steels, so long beam steels, for example, they can take a lot more vanadium. It's a big market, not fully utilized. Then you've got specialty steels, so high titanium alloy steels that go into turbine blades and other forms of high temperature work, rocket engines, other things like that. So things where you can use them. A lot of opportunity in there. Vehicle bodies, strengthening vehicle bodies, lighter frames, stronger frames, things like that. So there's huge markets that can within the steel space alone. Then there's a chemical space, so it's used in catalysts for acid production. A lot of catalyst business. AMG Vanadium is a listed company, just raised a $326 million bond for a new plant just to make new vanadium catalyst just a few days ago. So there are those chemical markets, and then overall you've got the real diversification market, the energy storage market. So there's two energy storage markets. There's stationary energy storage and mobile energy storage. So we know all about the car market and the EV market, and that's dominated by lithium-ion batteries and a changing chemistry there. So there is a possibility, by the way, that that changing chemistry will one day include vanadium itself in the cathode, in the car market for a number of reasons. Vanadium special in so many ways chemically. So you can see that there may even be a path for vanadium in that. So we're very excited by that, believe me. But then the vanadium energy storage, the flow battery, the Australian invention, is definitely a key new consumption driver for vanadium. Something that we as a company are very interested in driving in Australia. New and bigger flow batteries, much better idea, safer, much more large scale, real load shifting opportunity within the energy storage space, and a massive market, right? Really exciting market. So we think that over time that'll grow and add 1 or 2 or 3 new mines capacity over the next 10, 20 years. So that gives vanadium a lot more robustness as being not just a one-trick pony in the steel space. So that's why we're keen to drive it, and we've got a resource base to support supplying. That's why we're so interested in it. But that's the future, I think. There's a future in EV, there's a future in stationary storage, there's a future in battery growth generally, and there's very much a future and a stable future in steel and high-end steel.
So what's driving the spikes in the price that we see? Obviously, I think everyone was sort of looking for vanadium because the price went up. I think we discussed it before. What's creating those spikes?
So the vanadium price chart that if anyone looks at a vanadium price chart, they'll see it's full of some very volatile periods. But when you break it down into the distribution of pricing over the last 14 years, you'll see that there's a concentration of price occurrences, if you like, or the histogram of prices that is down between $6 and $8, which is the normal price, the average price, if you like, that we see overall. And then there's another bump in pricing around the $13 to $15 mark, and we've just been through one of those. So sometimes we get really extreme prices like we had last year, but those two bumps, they're not equal in size. The higher price bump is smaller volume, but it's a time when there's more demand than there is supply. So the market has to supply. That's primarily driven by steel, changes in the steel space, changes in steel demand. That's always been the case. So a lot of that price variation has been driven by changes in the Chinese steel industry directly. And the responses of the market, which is pretty much at capacity or even slightly short, going into 2018. That's what happened. At the very top of that price curve, where it comes off, you have substitution from high cost suppliers. In the case of Chinese stone coal, comes into the market. It's very expensive, dirty product, but it comes in and it brings the price up. It's a very opportunistic supply. And then you also have niobium substitution that can occur at higher vanadium prices, and that also came in. So often that price, when it gets too high, it comes off quite quickly. But remember, the price today is still nearly 3 times the price it was in 2015.
What is the price today?
It's just over $8, pushing up, increasing slightly from. It's started to move up in China in the last few weeks, so it's been very stable around the $7 to $8 mark for the last 3 months.
Per ton? What's the unit?
It's priced in dollars, US dollars per pound of each O5.
Okay.
So that gives you about about $17, $18 per ton US per kilogram, if you like. So in tons, it's $17,000 US a ton. So that's a good number. So it's a high value commodity, small mine.
In terms of Australian Vanadium as a company, I mean obviously the share price is reflected by demand, supply, interest in market, pricing of vanadium and things like that. How do you see yourself going forward, say, for an investor who wants to come in, or what's the upside in a company of, whether it's you guys or a vanadium company?
Well, if you look at us and you say, okay, well, let's compare ourselves to our peer companies. We've got 2 good peer companies to compare ourselves against. Okay, we've got Bushveld Minerals on the AIM, which was a $20 million market cap about 3 or 4 years ago. They did an acquisition of a producing mine, so they fast-tracked, if you like, their way to producing scenario. They were good enough to do that at the time of a price improvement, and their market cap is now £300 million, okay, from a $20 million AIM price. So that tells you what can happen, and they're generating lots and lots of cash from what they do. Now, you take Largo Resources. Largo is a slightly different trajectory. It raised a lot of debt, had a lot of startup issues, but it's a very high quality project, very high quality management team, and very high quality very high quality product that they produce. Now, they had some teething problems when they started that mine, and they were well funded with very good investors. We saw them through a tough time. They had a very good offtake partner come in with Glencore. Tough offtake partner, but good one. And they also happened to get through a price spike. So they had a market cap of probably $50 or $60 million when I started working at AVL. And they've got a market cap of over $1 billion Canadian. And they've paid all their debt off. And last year I think they made over $300 million. So those are the comparisons. And both of those companies produce an equivalent amount of vanadium as we would produce from AVL's production. So you can see where that's the trajectory. Now, as a junior company with a small market cap, we have to work our way through that, have to keep growing. But as we de-risk the project and show that we can be like that, that's where we should be going on a trajectory. So investors who want to believe in the vanadium story, get involved with all the things around it, can come along for that ride. They can be involved in the pricing that's now. It's good value, well less than 5% of MPV, which is a very low entry metric. You look at our value, and then look at those trajectories and see where you can go. And you're looking at continual de-risking, bringing in of bigger partners at the project level, off-take partners, and that'll start to make us secure one step after the other. And as we de-risk further by off-take and finishing our project milestones, so we should see the value accrete on that. And we'll get the investment that we do that. And the investment itself, the larger investment that we do, will definitely offset any effects of dilution as we move away along. Because having 10% of a producing company, if you own 10% of Bushveld, for example, at 20 million quid, and you own it, and you hang on to that, you might end up owning 2 or 3% of it after it's finished its funding round. But you're owning 2 or 3% of a 300 million quid company, right? So that's the outcome you want to get for investors.
So at the moment, just in a summary, where you're at to where you get to digging stuff out of the ground, there's obviously I think you've done your scoping study. Have you done any PFS or anything?
The PFS is finished.
PFS is finished.
We're in the middle of a pilot. We're doing a serious pilot on this thing.
Yep.
Because of the issues we talked about, the geology, you have to understand the geometallurgy properly.
Yep.
Make sure you design the process plant so it will work.
Yep.
And with these deposits, you make no assumptions that you know anything, until you've tested it properly, and then you build that.
Yeah.
You make an assumption, the saying goes. So,
Yeah.
so I think that's our trajectory. Finish the pilot,
Yeah.
and then complete the DFS on the back of the pilot data. That's where we are, and that'll mean we finish that late this year, early next year, and we are then pushing ahead to funding and feed from that. But if we're taking a bankable view, then we have to get. We have to be able to provide comfort for any investor or bank to look at that data and say we're happy.
It can be done.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they're going to be very, it's a mining project. So there's so many train wrecks out there. You want to go. These guys are going to come in and go. I'm going to really have a close look at this. Send my best team in, and I'm supremely comfortable that my team can answer all those questions. Both right from my skill as a geologist and my teams, right through the process. So we've got one of the best teams in the world set up and ready to go from a vanadium experience point of view.
No, it's good. I like. I've always liked things that are not in flavour, because then you can actually take your time and understand it, and then if we take positions and it takes off, then you're comfortable. When everyone's rushing in, that's when you actually don't know what you're doing. A lot of people say they do, but you don't actually do it.
No, you can't. I think you mustn't rush, but you must keep progress happening often, so the investors are happy that things are moving. But rushing is not a good thing, but also going slow is a bad thing. So you've got to keep that happy balance. Yeah. But I agree with you. Since I did my gold work in the early days, I've been interested in other commodities, manganese, uranium, now in vanadium. So things that are hard are good because I'm not overly interested in the basics. I think the real challenges are with commodities that can be difficult.
Yeah.
But good deposits are in production on those difficult deposits. Manganese ones, vanadium ones, they really are a challenge, but they're good to learn because you learn a lot more, right?
No, I like vanadium. I think it's one of those. As when I liked tungsten, I still do. I mean, because it's one of those products that I think is before its time. And as we go forward, things need to be lighter, stronger, more efficient. Like how artificial intelligence is taking over the world, and we humans will be. We need to diversify, right? So
material science is like the most exciting thing. So the thing that really started to attract me more to vanadium was that as a material, you look at its performance in steel, performance in the battery, its performance in other things like other inventions like window foams, and it's got unbelievable properties. But that's true of a lot of elements in the periodic table. We just haven't looked yet.
Yeah.
So we can really, as scientists, we can discover all these applications for new materials and old materials that do good things. We just need to pay attention to them, and then when we're doing that, we'll make a better world out of it.
No, it's good. It's good. Well, thanks, Vince, for coming, giving time and daring to front up on coffee with Samso. But it's one of those topics I quite like, and I've never quite understood. So easiest thing is call someone who knows someone.
I hope I've been of some help.
No, you have. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Great.